The U.S. Vigilant floated silently in the dark emptiness of space. Once a proud warship of humanity, it now drifted alone at the edge of our solar system. Its metal skin, once shiny and strong, was now marked with tiny holes and scratches from years of space dust hitting it. For over 100 years, this mighty ship had been left here, forgotten by most people on Earth. Commander Ethan Miller stood straight and tall as he watched the aliens looking at the old ship. As Earth's new representative to the Space Council of many alien races, he had to be polite. But it was hard when the aliens were being so rude. "Your kind keeps such old junk," said Ambassador Vexlor, moving his insect-like mouthparts in what humans knew was their way of laughing. "How cute, like little children saving their first toys." The aliens called themselves the Zarkov. They looked like 7-foot-tall praying mantises walking on 2 legs, with hard shells covering their bodies. They had been acting more and more pushy lately, testing how far they could go into areas that belonged to humans. Lieutenant Carol Walsh stood next to Miller. She wanted to say something angry, but she kept her cool and smiled instead. This friendly visit felt more like the aliens were checking out human defenses. "Sometimes old things still have worth," she said calmly. "We can learn a lot from history." What the aliens didn't know was that the U.S. Vigilant wasn't just an old, useless ship. Deep inside its quiet hallways, special computers were sleeping but not dead. All systems were turned off but still working, waiting for a signal to wake up. A signal that hadn't been needed for over 100 years. Miller remembered his briefing about the Vigilant. The ship was over 1 mile long, built in the time when humans made their best technology, before joining the Space Council with other aliens and agreeing to share and limit certain inventions. "How many weapons does this old thing have?" asked another alien, poking at a screen showing the ship's details. "None that work anymore." Miller lied smoothly. "Everything important was taken out long ago. It's just a shell now, kept as a memorial." The main alien, Vexlor, made that laughing motion again. "Good thing, too. Such old weapons would be no match for modern Zarkov ships anyway." Walsh caught Miller's eye, and they shared a quick look. Let the aliens think what they wanted. Later, as the alien group left in their shiny ship, Miller stood at the window watching the U.S. Vigilant grow smaller in the distance. "They really believe it's just junk," Walsh said quietly. Miller nodded. "That's exactly what we want them to think. Project Vigilant has been our secret backup plan for generations. Only the highest military leaders and the president know what that ship can really do." "Do you think we'll need it?" Walsh asked. "The Zarkov have been pushing harder into our space every month." Miller turned from the window, his face serious. "I hope not. But that's why we keep the Vigilant ready, just in case. One day we might need to wake the sleeping giant." What neither of them knew was how soon that day would come. As the Zarkov ship moved away, it was already sending messages back to their home world. Messages about weak human defenses and outdated technology. Messages that would soon lead to trouble. Inside the silent halls of the Vigilant, a tiny light blinked on a control panel. Just once, then off again. The ship's AI, called ARIA, had noticed the alien scans. Though mostly asleep, part of her was always watching. And she had just calculated that the chance of being needed soon had just gone up by 23%. The old Relic drifted on, patient and waiting. Its time would come again. 3 weeks passed quickly. Things with the Zarkov aliens were getting worse each day. They had started building stations in areas that were supposed to be neutral, claiming they needed them for their ships to travel. But these new stations would block Earth's ships from reaching their farthest colonies. President Samantha Wilson sat in the White House's Oval Office. Her face looked tired as she studied the reports in front of her. Admiral George Hawkins and Secretary of Defense Richard Patel sat across from her desk. "They're testing us," Admiral Hawkins said, pointing to a glowing map showing where the alien ships were moving. "Their ships are much better than our regular fleet. They know we can't fight them with what we have active now. The president tapped her fingers on the desk. "What about the Vigilant project?" she asked quietly. Patel shifted in his chair, looking uncomfortable. "Madam President, the Vigilant was the best we had in its day, but that was over 150 years ago. We're not sure if the wake-up plans will even work." "But is it possible?" she pressed. "Yes," Hawkins admitted. "The ship was built to sleep for a long time. Its brain, the AI core, was the most advanced we ever made. If we can wake it up, it might understand the danger, but we'd be putting a lot of hope in very old technology." The president stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the White House garden. "My grandfather told me stories about the Vigilant when I was little. He worked on the project near the end of his career. He always said it was humanity's ace in the hole." "It was," Hawkins agreed, "but no one has tested those systems in decades." A knock on the door interrupted them. The president's assistant entered. "Madam President, the Zarkoth ambassador is here to see you. He says it's urgent." Wilson nodded. "Send him in." Ambassador Vexlor entered the room, standing nearly 2 feet taller than the humans. His hard outer shell gleamed under the office lights. "President Wilson," he said, not bothering with polite greetings, "I bring a message from the High Command of the Zarkoth Empire." "Please, share it," Wilson said calmly. "You will give us control of the Proxima Centauri Gateway within 7 Earth days," the alien said, his voice cold. "If you do not, there will be consequences. Your colonies there are already surrounded by our ships." The Proxima Centauri Gateway was the main route to 5 human colony worlds. Without it, those colonies would be cut off. "That gateway is in human space," Wilson replied, keeping her voice steady. "We've allowed all peaceful ships to use it freely. We won't give up control of it." The alien made that clicking sound that was their laugh. "You mistake this for a negotiation. It is not. 7 days." With that, he turned and left. The room was silent for a long moment after he left. "He didn't even try to be diplomatic," Patel said finally. "They must think they have us cornered." Wilson returned to her desk and pressed a button. "Get me the head of Space Command." She looked at Hawkins. "Admiral, how quickly can we get a team to the Vigilant?" "We have a small crew on standby," Hawkins replied. "They could reach it in 36 hours. "Send them," Wilson ordered. "Tell them to prepare for Project Awakening." Patel looked worried. "Madam President, if we activate the Vigilant, the Zarkoth might see it as an act of war." "If we don't," Wilson answered, "we'll lose 5 colonies and our standing in the galaxy. Sometimes you need to show strength to avoid a fight." She turned to face the window again. "Besides, they already plan to attack. We need to be ready." Far away, in the darkness of space, the U.S. Vigilant continued its silent drift. Soon, footsteps would echo in its empty halls again. The sleeping giant was about to be awakened. Dr. Ellen Morris floated through the dark, cold hallways of the U.S. Vigilant. Her flashlight beam cut through the darkness, lighting up tiny dust particles that had not been disturbed for many years. Behind her, Chief Engineer Paul Rodriguez and AI Specialist Kelly Zhang moved carefully in their bulky spacesuits. "Power is almost gone," Rodriguez said, checking his tablet. "Only 2% left. Just enough to keep basic life support running and do our tests. If the main power source doesn't start, we'll be stuck here." The 3 of them had trained for this mission for years, but never thought they would actually have to do it. Now they were humanity's best hope. Morris reached the bridge of the ship. She stopped and caught her breath at the sight. Unlike modern ships with their see-through screens and controls, the Vigilant had physical stations with buttons and solid screens. Old-fashioned by today's standards, but impressive in how well they were built. Starting the wake-up process, Zhang announced. She connected her modern tablet to the old systems using a special adapter they had designed. If the ship's brain is still working, it should recognize the president's special codes. For several long minutes, nothing happened. The 3 humans waited, barely breathing in their suits. Then, with a low humming sound they could feel through their boots, emergency lights began to flicker on. Screens started to light up one by one as power began to flow through the long-sleeping ship. "Hello, Dr. Morris," came a calm woman's voice from the ship's speakers. "I am ARIA, Artificial Reactive Intelligence Algorithm. I detect that 153 years, 7 months, and 22 days have passed since I was last fully awake. I assume there is an emergency." Zhang looked shocked. "The AI is fully working. Even our newest systems can't work this well after being cold and off for so long." Morris moved closer to the main console. "ARIA, we need to restart the U.S. Vigilant. Earth is facing a serious threat." "I understand," ARIA replied. "Starting full system checks and power-up process. Time until ready for battle, 48 hours. Rodriguez whistled. "That's much faster than we thought possible. I have been maintaining minimal functions during my sleep cycle," ARIA explained. "All major systems have been preserved in working order." Over the next day, the ship came more and more alive. Lights turned on throughout the massive vessel. The air system began working, filling the ship with breathable air. The engine room began to glow with blue light as the main power source. A contained artificial black hole spun up to full power. More crew members arrived on small transport ships. They marveled at the technology around them. Even 153 years old, the Vigilant was in many ways more advanced than anything humans had built since joining the Galactic Conclave and agreeing to limit their technology. "The weapon systems are at 85% and climbing," ARIA reported on the second day. "Shield systems are fully operational. Engine power is at maximum capacity." Admiral Hawkins arrived just as the ship was nearing full readiness. He walked onto the bridge where Morris and her team were working. "How is our old girl doing?" he asked. "Better than anyone could have hoped," Morris replied with a smile. ARIA kept everything in perfect condition. "It's like the ship was just waiting for us to come back." "Good," Hawkins said grimly, "because the Zarkov fleet is on the move. They didn't wait their 7 days. They're heading for the Proxima Centauri gateway now." Morris turned to the main console. "ARIA, how soon can we be battle-ready?" 12 hours ahead of schedule," the AI replied. "All primary systems are operational. The U.S. Vigilant is ready to fulfill its purpose." Hawkins nodded. "Then it's time to show the Zarkov what humanity is really capable of." Outside, the great ship began to move for the first time in over a century. Its engines glowed brightly as it turned away from its long-held position. The Forgotten Guardian had awakened, and it was heading for battle. Admiral Zexmera of the Zarkov Imperial Fleet looked down at the small human diplomatic ship approaching his command vessel. These humans had asked for an emergency meeting, probably to give up and accept the Zarkov demands. His mouthparts clicked with pleasure. "Admiral," his officer in charge of scanning said, "we're picking up strange energy readings from that old human ship. It appears to be powering up." "Impossible," Zexmera said with a wave of his claw. "Our scans showed it was a dead hull. The power needed to restart such an old vessel would be." A bright flash interrupted him as a thin beam of energy shot out from the Vigilant, hitting a small asteroid 2 million kilometers away. The rock, nearly a kilometer wide, didn't explode. It simply disappeared, leaving nothing but a cloud of super-hot gas expanding in space. Silence fell across the Zarkov bridge. On the U.S. Vigilant, Commander Ethan Miller stood on the bridge beside Admiral Hawkins, watching as ARIA's weapons test finished. "Particle beam weapon working at 94.3% efficiency," the AI reported. "Targeting systems fully working. Defensive shields at 89% power and rising. Send the message to the Zarkov flagship," Hawkins ordered. Miller sent the message himself. "This is Commander Ethan Miller of Earth. The U.S. Vigilant has been put back in service and is now active. We ask that you remove your forces from the neutral areas immediately." The answer came quickly. "This show of force changes nothing," came Zexmera's voice, though it lacked its usual confidence. That ancient vessel is no match for our fleet. ARIS spoke only to those on the Vigilance Bridge. The Zarkov flagship is scanning us heavily. They are trying to see through our shields with their scanning beams. Let them look, Hawkins said with a grim smile. Time they learned what they're dealing with. Should I block their scans? Aria asked. No, Miller replied. Let them see just enough to make them nervous. On the Zarkov ship, the scanner officer was becoming more and more concerned. Admiral, their ship's hull is made of materials we don't recognize. The power source is unlike anything in our database. And their weapons. He paused, rechecking his readings. Their weapons shouldn't be possible with their level of technology. Zexmura clicked his mandibles in frustration. They have been hiding their true capabilities. Prepare all ships for battle. We will destroy this one vessel and then proceed to the gateway as planned. Back on the Vigilant, Araya announced, the Zarkov fleet is powering up weapons. They are taking battle positions. All hands to battle stations, Hawkins ordered. The crew rushed to their positions, many of them still learning the old-style controls of the massive warship. Admiral, Araya said, based on my analysis of their fleet movements, they plan to surround us and attack from all sides. They believe their numerical advantage will overwhelm us. What do you recommend? Hawkins asked the AI. A demonstration, Araya replied simply. They still do not understand what they are facing. Miller looked at Hawkins. Sir, we should try to avoid killing if possible. Most of the Zarkov are just following orders. Hawkins nodded. Araya, target their lead ship's weapon systems only. Disable, don't destroy. Understood, the AI replied. Targeting solution ready. The Zarkov fleet began to move, 12 battle cruisers forming a sphere around the single human vessel. On their bridges, the alien crews were confident. One old human ship, no matter how powerful, could not stand against 12 modern warships. They were about to learn how wrong they were. Fire, Hawkins commanded quietly. The U.S. Vigilant lit up with energy as its main weapons charged. The old Relic was fully awake now, and it was about to show the galaxy what humanity was truly capable of. The Zarkov were shocked by what their scans showed them. The Vigilant's hull was made of materials they couldn't identify. Its power source was unlike anything their scientists had ever seen. Most worrying were the weapon systems, technology that somehow seemed both old and beyond their understanding. On board the human ship, Dr. Morris was explaining things to Commander Miller as they walked through the key parts of the vessel. The Vigilant was built during what we call the Quantum Revolution, she said. It was the best thing humans ever made before we joined the Galactic Conclave and agreed to limit our technology. They entered the engine room, where a massive round chamber pulsed with blue-white energy. This is a contained artificial black hole, Morris continued. It's banned under Conclave rules now, but the Vigilant was allowed to keep it as a historical artifact, part of why it was never taken apart. No one outside Earth knows it still works. Rodriguez joined them, his face full of wonder. The engineering is amazing. These systems were designed to fix themselves and get better over time. The AI has been running tests and improvements for 150 years, even while mostly asleep. Some of these systems are actually better now than when the ship was built. But why keep it? Miller asked. Why maintain it in secret all these years? Insurance, Admiral Hawkins said, entering the room. Humanity joined the Conclave as equals, but many officials worried about becoming too dependent on alien technology. The Vigilant Project was our backup plan, a reminder of what humans could do on their own. In her core, Araya processed this conversation, while also watching the Zarkov fleet. Her calculations suggested a 78.4% chance they would attack rather than back down, exactly as she had predicted over a century ago. Admiral, Araya's voice came over the speakers. The Zarkov fleet is moving into attack formation. They are targeting our main engines first. They still think they can win, Hawkins said, shaking his head. Araya, show them why they're wrong. The first shots from the Zarkov fleet streaked toward the Vigilant. Everyone on the bridge tensed, waiting for impact. But the energy beams simply vanished as they hit the ship's shields. Shield systems fully working, Araya reported calmly. No damage detected. The Vigilant began to move, gliding smoothly through space with surprising speed for such a large vessel. The ship was over a kilometer long, but moved like something much smaller. Target their weapons only, Hawkins ordered. Disable their ships but avoid killing their crews if possible. Acknowledged, Araya responded. What followed wasn't really a battle. It was more like a demonstration. The Vigilant's particle beams struck with perfect accuracy, hitting the weapons systems on the Zarkov ships one by one without destroying the vessels. When the aliens launched fighter craft, Araya used defensive measures that shut down their systems without harming the pilots. Dr. Morris watched the screens with amazement. Araya is targeting their ships with surgical precision. I've never seen anything like it. The Vigilant was designed to be decisive but humane, Hawkins explained. Its weapons can disable without destroying. We wanted to avoid unnecessary death, even in war. On his flagship, Admiral Zex Mara watched in horror as his mighty fleet was methodically neutralized by technology his people had dismissed as outdated. How is this possible? He demanded, slamming his claw on his command chair. One ancient vessel against 12 of our newest battlecruisers. His weapons officer, mandibles trembling, replied, Their technology is beyond our understanding, Admiral. They're not just disabling our weapons. They're doing it without even damaging the surrounding systems. It's like they're using surgical tools instead of weapons. As the last Zarkov ship lost its weapons capability, the human vessel came to a stop. Commander Miller's voice came over the communication channel. Admiral Zex Mara, your fleet has been neutralized. We could have destroyed you, but that's not our way. Return to your territory and inform your leaders that Earth is not to be threatened again. For the first time in his long military career, Zex Mara felt true fear. What other secrets were these humans hiding? Admiral Zex Mara was not ready to admit defeat. After the first attack failed, he called for backup. 6 more Zarkov battlecruisers jumped into the area, their engines glowing bright against the darkness of space. Sir, Lieutenant Walsh said on the Vigilance bridge, more enemy ships have arrived. We're now facing 18 battlecruisers. Admiral Hawkins nodded calmly. Araya, what's your assessment? The additional ships do not change the outcome, the ad replied. However, they are positioning themselves to force us towards Saturn. They believe the planet's rings will limit our movement. Miller studied the tactical display. They don't understand that we can use the rings to our advantage. Precisely, Commander, Araya said. I suggest we allow them to think their plan is working. Hawkins agreed. Take us into the rings, Araya. Let's show them what this old ship can really do. The massive human warship turned and accelerated toward Saturn. The alien fleet followed, thinking they had the Vigilant on the run. Inside Saturn's rings, chunks of ice and rock floated in endless patterns. Most ships would have to move slowly here to avoid collisions, but the Vigilant was different. Activating phase shields, Araya announced. As the ship entered the rings, smaller pieces of ice and rock simply passed through its shields without causing damage. They can't do that, Dr. Morris explained to Miller. Their shields are solid energy barriers. Ours can selectively let harmless objects pass through while stopping weapons. The Zarkov fleet slowed as they entered the rings, carefully navigating between the larger chunks. This was exactly what ARIA had planned. They've separated their formation, the AI noted, beginning targeted response. The Vigilant suddenly changed direction, moving at full speed through the ring system. To the amazed Zarkov, it looked like the human ship was dancing between obstacles that should have destroyed it. Admiral Zex Mara watched in disbelief. How are they moving so fast in these conditions? Before his officers could answer, The Vigilant fired. 3 precise shots hit 3 different Zarkov ships, instantly shutting down their engines. The ships began to drift helplessly. "Divide their fleet," Hawkins ordered. "Take them out one by one." What followed was not just a battle, but a lesson. The Vigilant used Saturn's rings like a home field advantage, sometimes hiding behind larger chunks of ice, other times using the debris to confuse enemy targeting systems. Aria's calculations were perfect. The Vigilant would appear suddenly from behind a large chunk of ice, fire at 1 or 2 ships with perfect accuracy, then disappear again into the maze of the rings. "They're trying to surround us on the left," Walsh reported. "Let them think they have us," Miller suggested. Hawkins nodded. "Aria, spring the trap when ready." 3 Zarkov ships moved to block the Vigilant's escape route. For a moment, it seemed they had the human vessel cornered against a particularly dense section of the rings. "Now," Hawkins said quietly. The Vigilant suddenly accelerated straight toward the densest part of the rings. The Zarkov commanders watched in shock as the human ship seemingly headed for certain destruction. Then, at the last moment, a section of the Vigilant's hull glowed bright blue. "Phase shift engaged," Aria reported. The massive warship passed straight through the wall of ice and rock, emerging on the other side completely unharmed. Before the Zarkov could react, the Vigilant fired again, disabling the engines and weapons of all 3 pursuing ships. On his flagship, which was now drifting with dead engines, Admiral Zex Mera slammed his claw down in anger. "This is impossible. No ship can phase through solid matter." His science officer's voice was shaking. "The humans, they've had this technology all along and kept it secret." One by one, the remaining Zarkov ships were disabled. Some tried to flee, but the Vigilant was faster. Within an hour, all 18 alien battlecruisers floated helplessly in Saturn's rings, their weapons and engines dead, but their life support systems untouched. The message was clear. Humanity could have destroyed them all, but chose mercy instead. 2 months after what people now called the Saturn Ring battle, Commander Miller stood in a large meeting room. Around him were not just the Zarkov, but leaders from 12 other alien species of the Galactic Conclave. All had gathered for this emergency meeting. Through the big window, the U.S. Vigilant floated in space nearby. Its hull now shone brightly in the light of Jupiter's moons where the meeting was being held. No longer a forgotten relic, the ship had been fully restored to its former glory. "The humans have broken the spirit of our technology agreements," Ambassador Vexlor insisted, though with much less pride than before. "This warship is a danger to the peace between our worlds." President Wilson, who had traveled here personally for these talks, shook her head. "The Vigilant was built before we joined the Conclave. Its existence and abilities were listed in the history records we gave you when we joined. Its listing as a memorial ship was accepted by this very council." The Arcturian representative, a being that looked like living crystal, made a sound like small bells ringing. "Perhaps we only saw what we wanted to see about human abilities. It was more comfortable to think of you as junior partners than as equals with different strengths." Miller watched as the diplomatic talks continued. He could already see the final result. The Zarkov had pulled back their forces. New agreements were being written, ones that recognized humanity's right to keep their historical defense technologies. On the Vigilance bridge, Lieutenant Walsh stood with Dr. Morris, watching the meeting through a video link. "Do you think they'll ever trust us again?" Walsh asked. Morris smiled. "Trust is earned through honesty and strength. For the first time, they're seeing both from us." Admiral Hawkins joined them on the bridge. "The President just sent word. The Zarkov have officially withdrawn all their claims to the Gateway and our territories. They're not used to losing," Walsh noted. "No one likes to lose," Hawkins replied. "But sometimes a clear demonstration of strength prevents a bigger conflict. That was always the purpose of the Vigilant, to be so powerful that no one would want to fight it." In her core systems, ARIA continued her work. She had calculated thousands of possible futures and had selected actions that would lead to peace rather than ongoing war. After 153 years of waiting, analyzing, and preparing, she had fulfilled her purpose, not through destruction, but by showing enough strength to prevent more fighting. Morris asked the AI, "Did you know this would happen? Did you predict all this during your long sleep?" "I calculated many possible outcomes," the AI replied. "This was among the more favorable scenarios. Humans created me not just to win wars, but to prevent them when possible." President Wilson joined them on the bridge a few hours later. She looked tired but pleased. "The conclave has agreed to our terms," she announced. "The Vigilant will remain in service as Earth's official guardianship, and more importantly, they've agreed to review the technology restriction treaties. We'll be allowed to share some of our older quantum technologies to help other species." "So the Vigilant helped create peace, not just win a battle," Miller said. Wilson nodded. "That was always the higher purpose of this ship, to protect humanity not just through force, but by earning respect." As the diplomatic teams prepared to return to Earth, the great ship's engines hummed to life. The U.S. Vigilant, once mocked as an old relic, now moved proudly through space. The galaxy had learned an important lesson: never judge by appearances alone, and never underestimate humanity. In her core, ARIA was already planning for the future, a future where humans would be treated as true equals in the galactic community. The old relic had awakened, and nothing would ever be the same again.